Has escalated very rapidly between Israel and Gaza. Israel has used air raids to target what it says are launching spots for rockets. 7 Palestinians died in those attacks over the last 24 hours, but that hasn't stopped the violence. On the contrary, 3 Israelis were killed today. And look at these latest pictures. People hitting the floor in Tel Aviv because a rocket has now landed on the outskirts of Israel's largest city. What kind of retaliation should we be expecting? Are we heading towards a full-blown conflict? I'm going to put those questions to my guests this evening. Kareem Amira is on set with us. Thank you for coming here this evening. You're a member of Fatah, the Palestinian party that essentially runs the West Bank. You're also a master's student at Sciences Po. That's the French premier political science institute. Thanks for being with us. MIHAELY is on set with us as well. You're a columnist for Yedioth, Ahronoth. You're a regular here on these France 24 debates. Live from Tel Aviv is Dr. Einat WILF, a member of Israel's Knesset and chair of the Knesset's Education, Sports and Culture Committee. More importantly, you're a foreign affairs member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. Also, over the phone from Gaza City is Dr. Hani Alba, a professor of political science at the Islamic University of Gaza. And on set with us, completing this panel, is France 24's very own Douglas Herbert. Thanks for being with us. The first thing I'd like to do is watch the report that came in today that was filed by our correspondent, Gallagher Fenwick. He spent the day going back and forth between Israel and the Gaza Strip. Here's the very latest report that he filed.
In this building in a small town in the south, Israel's first civilian casualties. 3 dead after a Palestinian rocket hit their home. A few kilometers away, Israeli soldiers are on high alert close to the border with Gaza. As we finally manage to get into the coastal enclave, rockets tear through the skies. Much of Gaza has turned into a no man's land. Most of the locals who dare venture out into the streets are carrying the body of Hamas's military leader to his grave. They vow to avenge his death.
Our military leader, al-Jabari, left behind him an army of fighters who will avenge his blood. It's a great loss for the Palestinian people, but what brings us solace is that the resistance is steadfast and they're currently retaliating.
Further away, Hamas police are usually all night present on these streets, but today most of them have gone into hiding. Those who are trying to work despite the situation express anger.
The situation is catastrophic, and I pray to God to make their lives hell.
And are you afraid?
No, I'm not.
While every single shop on the street is closed, this restaurant owner chooses to stay open.
I have a restaurant. I have to work. We ask God to protect us and for the situation to improve.
In Gaza, everyone keeps an eye on the skies as Israeli bombardments continue rocking the territory. This right here is Gaza's main avenue, and the fact that it is practically empty is a clear sign that the many Gazans who have chosen to stay home fear that the worst may be yet to come.
Well, I have a couple of questions for Gallagher, and he's going to be with us in just a few moments. But first, I'd like to go to Dr. Einat WILF. Dr. WILF, where do you see this conflict going, given the latest developments, given the fact that a rocket landed on the outskirts of Tel Aviv?
It certainly seems to be that Hamas is doing its utmost to ensure that a greater number of civilians is targeted. They are engaging in a crime of war by deliberately targeting civilians in Israel, including in its greatest city in Tel Aviv, and doing so while hiding behind civilians. Israel's responses for years have been very measured, very careful. Even now, when Israel decided to respond to months of rocket attacks, it did so by directly going after the person responsible for that. And we will try to respond in a way that is targeted, that goes against the missiles, I mean, if you look at it, for the last
Dr.
few
Wilf,
years,
pardon me for
what has
interrupting. The
Israel
question I'm
spent
asking,
its money
Dr.
on?
Wilf, just a moment. The question I'm asking here is, what do you think is going to be Israel's answer to this latest development?
As I said, Israel tries to be very measured, very careful, and very prudent in its response, while Hamas is certainly not doing the same. We will examine the options. Certainly, I'm not the person, and even if I were, I would not say it here, what Israel's response will be. Ultimately, this operation has a very clear and internationally legitimate goal, which is that Hamas cease to attack Israeli civilians. I think it's a very simple goal. It's one that Hamas should have stopped doing years ago. It's one that is supported by all the major leaders in the world, clearly, who have put the responsibility. Yes.
Would you say a ground operation in the Gaza Strip has been made more likely by a rocket landing near Tel Aviv?
Israel has made it clear that it is prepared to engage in ground operation if necessary. But again, if anything, Israel has shown years of restraint, of prudence, a very careful response. And if Hamas understands tomorrow, in the next hour, that our goal is limited, just stop targeting our civilians, there will be no need to proceed beyond the current situation.
Okay, I'd like to go to Gallagher Fenwick, the reporter for us on the ground who filed the report you saw just a few moments ago. Gallagher, first off, can you give us the latest from Tel Aviv?
Sirens ringing out. That's a very powerful symbol. Those Israelis having to lie down beside their cars out there. That is a clear psychological threshold right there, which has been passed at this point. Remember that Hamas had been claiming so far that it was shooting rockets that have the capacity to go that far. It hadn't been confirmed, and then those sirens started ringing out, and then the Israeli army also confirmed that indeed these rockets were now being shot as far as Tel Aviv, and that is a very, again, a strong message being sent by Hamas, which is now demonstrating its capacity to reach cities in central Israel with its arsenal. And this despite the ongoing campaign of Israeli bombardments throughout the Strip. These hits have been ringing out throughout the day, throughout the evening. Very loud noises behind me quite regularly in the Israeli army, saying it's basically trying to completely annihilate Hamas's arsenal of medium, long-range rockets. The Prime Minister of Hamas is currently giving a press conference. It's going to be very interesting to see what he has to say. It's the first time he's speaking since Ahmed al-Jabari, the military chief of Hamas's armed wing, was assassinated yesterday. He's probably going to reaffirm what his spokespeople were saying a little bit earlier, which is that for now there's absolutely no question of considering a truce for Hamas, which is intensifying its rocket shootings at Israel at this point.
Gallagher, now your report showed what happened on both sides of that border during the day. It gave us a pretty good sense of what that was like. The one remaining thing I wanted to ask you was, did you get a chance to speak to people and figure out whether there is an appetite on both sides of that border for the kind of conflict that we saw in 2008, 2009, 3 weeks of conflict that left some 12 to 1,400 Palestinians dead?
Well, no one will tell you out here that they want war, that they want to engage in confrontation with their enemy, whether it be on one side or the other. However, what I am hearing is that on both sides, people say that they have a right to defend themselves, and therefore they have the right to engage in the kind of operations they're engaging in. Israelis, that be the air raids being conducted, and on the Palestinian side, those tens, dozens, if not hundreds of rockets that have been shot lately towards Israel. At this point, it's very clear that Hamas wants vengeance for the death of Ahmed al-Jabari, its military chief. And on the Israeli side, the goal being put forward by the Israeli army is that of restoring its power, its capacity of deterrence. And that's something which we don't seem to be seeing right now, because the rockets keep flying out of Gaza and into Israel. And that has that threat of a deeper, more extensive Israeli operation into Gaza clearly hovering this evening above the Strip.
All right, Gallagher Fenwick speaking from the Gaza Strip. Thank you very much. I'd like to turn now to Dr. Hani Alba, who's taking part in this debate over the phone. Dr. Alba, you're a professor of political science at the Islamic University of Gaza. Let me ask you, what is Hamas trying to achieve? Just the day when Israel says it will do anything to defend its borders and its population, a rocket is launched into Tel Aviv, and you know that is going to spark off a chain reaction in the Israeli chain of command. What is Hamas trying to achieve?
Well, I think Hamas is trying to respond to the Israeli attack on the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military forces have begun such an attack by assassinating the Hamas chief of command in the military wing. This is not the first time. It has been for the past many weeks. The Israeli military forces attacking the Gaza Strip fiercely and intensively, killing many people, having ceasefire and coming back to the same point. I think the situation before yesterday was calm and was a ceasefire between the two sides, where the Israeli military forces yesterday suddenly had attacked Ahmad al-Jabari, the chief military force of the Hamas, beginning a new wave of escalation, a new attack on the Gaza Strip. I don't think that Hamas would keep silent towards that situation. Not only Hamas, even all Palestinian militant factions would have to use their own might and their own power to respond to the Israeli military forces. And I think what's happening now from Gaza towards the Israeli side is a response, and a basic response. We cannot say at the same time that we have an equation of equal power. The Palestinian militant factions have a small amount of power. Meanwhile, the Israeli military forces have the technology and airplanes, they have the warplanes, and they have all the weapons.
Dr. Alba-Soos, the message from Israel so far has been clear. Stop firing the rockets, and this won't go any further. On the day that Israel says that, or the day following that statement from Israel, rockets are fired further than ever before. Should we understand that Hamas is intent on taking this conflict to the next level?
Well, it might be like this, but I think at the same time, Hamas is doing its best to defend the Palestinian society, as Gaza has been under intensive siege and attack by the Israeli military forces for the past many years, and this situation has been intensified for the past few weeks. I think Hamas would try to give a clear message to the Israeli military forces that you have to stop the occupation, you have to end the siege, and you have to stop attacking persons and institutes and attacking the Gaza Strip. It's not about keeping the situation as intense as it is. I think Hamas built its own government in Gaza and has been building the infrastructure on the Palestinian society. They want to keep the situation calm and safe for the whole people in Gaza, but keeping the situation under direct attack from week to another week by the Israeli military forces. This is not a safe life. I could not go to the studio this evening myself because the situation is very tense, and life like this in the Gaza Strip, it's unbearable. We cannot keep the situation as it is. Either I think it would be a ceasefire for long term between the two sides, or might be a confrontation would be possible, like we're witnessing now. Situation is getting so hard, and we expect anything to happen, like even a ground invasion. Despite the fact, I doubt it. But we still, people are panicking. People have the fear that something bad might happen in the next few hours. We don't know exactly what would happen.
All right, let me turn now to Kareem Amira. We just heard Dr. Alba-Soos saying one of the two options here is either the conflict escalates or there's a ceasefire. The question I'm putting to the Palestinian side this evening is, if there is an intention to engage in ceasefire, then why continue to fire rockets?
Well, the question is why there is no ceasefire, why the Israelis are not serious in ceasefire, because simply it's a matter of commitment. It's a matter of the Israeli side ability to commit on their major agreement, even in a small ceasefire. Gaza was under ceasefire. the Israeli very high technology aircraft who killed the Palestinian leader. So it's a matter of Israeli want to cease fire and keep their dignity while asking Hamas to cease fire without, I mean, they want to justify themselves in front of their people while they're asking Hamas to stop the rocket from their side while not protecting their face in front of their people. Simply as this.
Well, this is a catch-22 situation then, with both sides saying the other side should stop first. Gil MIHAELY, how important is this? How significant is this development of the rocket landing near Tel Aviv? Is this a game changer?
It is important, and there's another fact behind it, which is even more important, that as far as I know, this missile was not fired by Hamas, but by the Islamic Jihad, which means that in Gaza, they took responsibility, which means that and this is where we are getting to the heart of the problem. In Gaza, where we're supposed to have a Hamas government, a strategic step was taken by a military force, which is not Hamas. Then the question is, with whom Israel should discuss the ceasefire? With whom? And behind the Islamic Jihad, there are other organizations. So the first problem, and one of the first objectives of this operation, is paradoxically to help Hamas, or to push Hamas, to oblige Hamas to take control of the Gaza Strip and to regain the monopoly of violence in Gaza. And then, only when Hamas will be in charge of Gaza, then there could be an agreement to ceasefire, like in the last 4 years or even better. And as for the question of dignity, what happens usually is that there is a ceasefire. Israel lets the Palestinians fire the last rockets so that the Palestinians can say that they won the war, and then we go through the ceasefire for years. It happened with Hezbollah in the north. There was an agreement, and they fired the last rocket, and everyone is happy, and the Palestinians can say that they won the war. The basic thing is to move on to a solid ceasefire guaranteed by the Egyptians, and where the Hamas is the master of Gaza.
Doug Herbert, really quickly, we have under a minute left.
One little paradox here. I mean, the man that was taken out, al-Jabari, he actually was a point man in these negotiations. Egypt obviously trying to facilitate the negotiations between Israel and Hamas before this latest escalation. So the irony is the very guy who was killed, now it's no love lost, obviously, with him, but he was seen as someone, at least, that was involved in helping to mediate the ceasefire that was tenuously holding, more or less, until this latest escalation.
Okay, Doug Herbert, thank you very much. Join us in just a few moments, just after this break.
Since the discovery of gold in the Bagaway riverbed, the Ivory Coast Kapalo mine has become a magnet for West Africa's poorest people. From dawn until dusk, tens of thousands of men, women and children work the land and themselves to the point of exhaustion. Gold fever has emptied the schools and left the crops abandoned. The stability of this impoverished farming region hangs by a thread. Reporters, today, 9:45 p.m. Paris time on France 24.